Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar Podcast. Very excited for today's episode. I got another musician on with me. This is going to be super cool. He's going to get all the analogies, I'm sure. So we're talking today with the managing director of Total Buy-In. And what he does is he helps people to better engage their audience when presenting by connecting their personal stories to their leadership style. Super excited to be rocking out today with Tyler Foley. Hey, Tyler, you ready to rock?
Oh, I'm ready to rock, Tim. I've had this circled literally for months. You and I've had this scheduled on, and I can't even begin to tell you, man. I'm buzzing.
Perfect. Well, this is going to be super cool. We always start off here on a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business that we can be inspired by.
It's funny because you and I had talked offline, and I was always prepped for this, and I'm like, what is some of those really big moments? And my big business success, I think, for me was when I finally got to publish my book. And that was one of those things where I'd had business mentors who had been telling me this is a thing that you need to do, and I kept pushing against it. And I'm not a writer. I don't want to write. And ironically, I still view that having a few published works out there now, I still wouldn't consider myself a writer. But I remember the impetus being getting the opportunity to speak on the Power of Success stage. And, the opportunity to share a stage with Tony Robbins. The thing that was holding me back, the promoter, Salim, had told me that he couldn't have me on the stage if I didn't have a book and a course to offer. And I had the course, but I didn't have the book. And I remember being like, well, how long do I have to get this book out? And he basically gave me a couple of months. He's like, if you can get this, it's December now. If you can get this done by March and published in around April, we can get you up onto the September and October stages. And I would do that, sir. And then it became this big, now what? What do I do? I'm committed to this thing and I am not a writer. So how do I get this done? And what we ended up doing was taking my course, my Power to Speak Naked course, which at the time was actually not titled The Power to Speak Naked. It was originally titled Basic Instructional Technique, the BIT course, geared towards construction supervisors so that, when they were thrust into this leadership position, they could get up and present usually training material. Mm-hmm. We called it Basic Instructional Technique because if you called it Public Speaking 101, nobody would show up because everybody hates public speaking. So we had to disguise what it was and make it this interesting course. So we compressed all of that information. And what we ended up doing was taking, because I'm a born performer, as you'd mentioned, I'm a musician, I'm a former child actor. And so I've been on stages most of my life and I record everything, absolutely everything. So I had hundreds of hours of videos of me presenting this Basic Instructional Technique. Was a 2-day workshop. And so we took all of the video, grabbed the audio off of it, transcribed the audio, and then put it into it. Because it was a course, it was naturally structured into chapters anyway. And I had an editor who was really, really, really good. And we kind of pieced it together, and that became the book. The hardest part of the book was actually not putting together the book. The hardest part was coming up with the title and then getting the cover artwork for it.
Wow, that is such a great story. What's funny is that I've got, like, in music, I've got so many people that will be like, oh, put together a little project and all that stuff. And I always found that I get the gig first, then I put together the project for the gig. And it works so much better that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's funny what an impending deadline will do for you. And totally. The other thing is too, is there's a little bit more like charge behind it, right? Like if you arbitrarily give yourself a deadline, whatever, but to know that you have to do this thing on this date or XYZ doesn't happen, or that dream that you have doesn't get fulfilled, that's the big thing. And in my case, the greatest reward was seeing the impact that book had. I would have never put it out if Salim hadn't pushed me to do it. But here I am now, and I get to say, not only do I get to say I'm a published author, but #1 best-selling author. And all of that came from the opportunities that presented themselves after I was able to speak to a crowd of 9,000 people in the middle of Toronto.
That's so cool too. And sharing the stage with Tony Robbins, how was that experience?
That is so surreal and a little bit more PR than what it actually is, because Tony is Tony. So he's going up. When Tony's on stage, you don't share the stage with Tony. You spoke on a stage that Tony Robbins was on as well, and he finished, right? But it was, I mean, it's cool I got to meet him backstage, and I mean, he literally is the giant of self-development. So to be able to just be in his presence for a couple of minutes, and all the rest of us had a green room that we were in, and then Tony had his separate green room. So there wasn't like even a little bit of mix and mingle that way, but he was very gracious to come and say hi to the rest of us. And he knew a couple of the other speakers that were there, Phil Town, and who else? Rachel was there. So a couple of different, speakers that he knew from the circuit and it was becoming a little bit more familiar with. So to be included with that was an absolute joy and a pleasure. And then, the other opportunities that came from that too. So like I got to have Les Brown open for me at a speaking gig in Oregon. And that's again, a little bit more PR because Les, as I don't know if many people know who Les Brown is. A lot of people know.
I do.
Yeah. And he's been living with cancer for a couple of decades now. And winning that fight, but he still, it's an issue for him. And he was speaking at a 3-day event in Bend, Oregon, and couldn't finish the last day because he wasn't feeling well and he had to go and get some medical tests. And the promoter of that event knew Salim, who was the promoter at Power of Success and Power of Influence. And she had seen me and was familiar with me and reached out to me and said, listen, can you get down here in the next 24 hours? Because, I need somebody to finish up this event, and Les is doing his thing on public speaking. And I know you do a really good job of that. Will you come and do this? And I was like, absolutely. So I got to go and close out the event for Les. And so now I get to tell everybody that Les opened up for me.
That is so cool. Man, lots of last minute stuff, right? That you get offered and you just take it, right? And go with it.
You never know what happens when you say yes, but a lot of that comes with the prep work to be able to, have, right. We'll get into it, but right. It's, you can't just get up and gig. If you're a musician, the people don't understand the years of practice and rehearsal that goes into a really good set on stage. I mean, you look at what Taylor Swift is doing right now with her Eras tour. She's literally presenting all of the eras of her music career. She's been playing, I think, since she was under 10, I think. And now she's in her 30s. And the nice thing about that tour, if anybody can't afford this $7 million ticket, hopefully she's released it into theaters and you can go watch it there for only a couple $100 now for a movie ticket. But you watch that progression of her music writing and even just this the stagecraft that she has and how her stage show has developed. Like that doesn't come overnight. That's a lot of practice and rehearsal that we don't get to see. And same with this. Like I've been public speaking since I was 6 years old. It was the first time that I ever got on stage as a professional actor was at 7. And so I'm into my 4th decade of performing on stage. So there's a lot of, and I'm continually working on that craft. So I think, I've had a lot of last minute opportunities, but I was able to succeed because I had all the prep work going.
Yeah, exactly. The preparation was already there for the opportunity that you could take. Yeah. Okay. Now, I mean, not everything's magic though, right? There are some bad notes from time to time. I'm wondering, can you share something that, just was devastating that you ended up bouncing back from that we can either, avoid or come back from ourselves?
Yeah, the diminished F sharp that shouldn't have been in that chord. Yeah, I've had a few of those. So I know the biggest learning lesson that I had, it's funny that we were talking about preparation, is not knowing what I didn't know. When I started my first company, you know, I've been performing most of my life, but for a brief period in my late 20s, I tried fighting the arts and wanted to get a real job. And I went back to school and I got an engineering discipline, specialized in geomatics. For anybody who doesn't know, that's, earth study and making maps and surveying. And the first company that I started with my mentor, and it was an aerial survey company because I specialized in photogrammetry. My one uncle is a photogrammetrist. My other uncle is a photogrammetrist and a cartographer. My other uncle was a bathymetric surveyor for the military. My grandfather was a surveyor. So it's in my blood. It was a thing that I understood. And my mentor at the time specialized. She was one of the best photogrammetrists in North America, and I got to study under her, and it was phenomenal. So we would do these. We had a fleet of 3 planes, small little, two of them single engine, one of them a dual prop, and we would fly the ground and take pictures of the ground and stitch it together and make. Anybody who's ever flipped on satellite view on Google Maps, that's what I did. I made those pretty pictures of the ground.
Okay.
And it was a really great business. It was that was going to be my future. That's what I invested everything in. I literally invested everything that I owned into getting that business going. And it was going really well for about 3 years. And then my business partner, who, because she was more established and because she had most of the money, almost everything was in her name. Planes are not cheap. The scanner that we ended up moving into mobile interior scanning. And that cart was like $1.5 million. Planes are expensive. So everything was in her name. And she wasn't feeling good one weekend and, went to the hospital Friday evening after work and never left the hospital. And so literally overnight, and over a weekend, I not only lost a friend and a mentor, but I lost my business partner and my business because I didn't have the right director's insurance in place. When she passed away, everything was in her name of importance. And I had no legal way of taking over the company. I was a vice president in name and title, and I was on a lot of the structure when it came to the organization and the shares within the company. But the shares were literally worthless overnight with her passing because all of the finances were wrapped up with her as the president and the chief financial officer. And, that was one of the dangers of a small company. Like, we only had 12 employees at our peak. Usually we were running on a staff of about 7 or 8. And so you don't think of things like succession or director's insurance or all of those things that were kind of out of your scope. And I didn't think to ask. And the irony is I had some of the best business minds that I know that were supporting me. My uncle had run a successful mapping firm for over 30 years, grew it to multi-million dollars and sold it off. My other friend, who is an international business lawyer, was advising us, and he made his first $1 million at 18 selling water out of his backyard. And that's, so I had people who knew what they were doing, and I just didn't ask the right questions, didn't know what I didn't know. And to have that collapse overnight was an excellent learning opportunity for me, but it's probably the biggest sour note that I've hit in my career.
Well, that's something that, like you say, I mean, all these mentors, that's probably a situation that never happened to them, right? I mean, it's just, well, how would you even know? How would you know that, right?
Yeah.
I suppose the only thing would be the succession part.
Well, but even still, so we had an idea of succession, but that's down the road.
Yeah.
That's down the road. We're 3 years into this venture, and I was young. Like, at the time, I was, early 30s, like 31, 32. And Jan wasn't that old. She was in her early to mid 50s. So it's like it was not something that when we're talking succession, well, let's build the empire first before we figure out how we're going to sell it off and pass it on. We were still in the growth phase. And so, although we had an idea of what succession would look like, those weren't formalized discussions up front as part of building the enterprise. And certainly not something that when we were looking at getting our insurance, and we had to be very well insured. So the one cart that we had a military grade IMU, which is an inertial measurement unit. It's the same piece of equipment that they put in the Scud missile so that the Scud missile can guide itself and land perfectly where it's supposed to and not hurt other people, only hurt the things that it's supposed to hurt. So we had to get top secret military clearance through both the US and Canadian government to have this piece of equipment. Further, we needed to have a ridiculous amount of insurance in case this thing got stolen. So we had insurance, and we had talked multiple times with our insurance provider, and director's insurance wasn't one of those things that got checked off on the box.
Wow. Okay. Wow. And I don't even know what lesson did come out of it though? Like, what have you changed anything about how you operate from that lesson?
Well, yeah. So ask the questions and ask, what is it that what are all the scenarios, and start to pull in some of those higher experts. The biggest lesson that I learned was ask for a gap analysis from an outside provider. What could go wrong, and evaluate it that way. And I've used that a lot of times, especially when things aren't going right. Oftentimes it's just one little course correction that needs to happen, and then all of a sudden everything clicks. But it's so hard to get outside of the view. And even with the people that you're regularly working with, right? Like even if you're hiring professionals, like I change my accountant every 4 years. Not because I think my accountant is bad, but because I want a new set of eyes on my books. And then if it goes, if the new guy is doing something that the other lady wasn't in a bad way, then I can go back to the lady and say, hey, let's re-look at our relationship going forward. But I tend to get a new professional, whether it's my lawyer, whether it's my accountant, whether it's one of those business professionals. I tend to change them up every 3 to 4 years just to get new eyes on it, even if it's within the same organization or company. Like my lawyer, my legal team doesn't change, but I always get a new lawyer to come in and take over my account every 3 years.
Wow. Well, I mean, that leads us right into the next topic, which is about the band and the people that you have around you. And it sounds like you either put a lot of thought into it or it magically comes to you. I'm not sure. Which one would it be?
Column A, column D. I think one of my biggest assets that I've ever had is the ability to recognize people's talents. One of the child entities of this parent company that is Total Buy-In is a talent agency that I'm a silent partner in. For a long while, I was an acting agent inside the agency. Getting actors and finding the raw talent and getting them in front of the camera, or getting them up on stage and getting them seen by the people to see them. And, even now, one of the things that I do for fun, when I'm not working, is still work, and that is produce musical theater. Being able to find that raw talent. So I've always had this eye for talent in the creative space, but I think I have an eye for talent in what people's passions are. So my best friend, when he became a lawyer, I'm like, of course he became, he was smart in business, but he was often smarter than the people who were giving him legal advice. And so he understood the law better. He just needed to get the degree to go behind it. And I do that with most of the professionals, like even the people that I work with within my organization. A lot of them I bring on board initially as subcontractors before I hire them, just to test out the waters. But the people who are doing really good, like you want to work with them, right? Musicians want to work with the best producers, because you could be the best musician in the world, but if your audio track is recorded poorly, nobody will ever be able to tolerate listening to your album.
Yep.
And so you go out and you find the Muttlangs who can make Shania Twain a star, you know? And for me, that's one of the things that I've always kind of had a gift for, is seeing where people's passions are and being able to help them apply that. So for me, I collect, I collect talent. I both realistically when it comes to my talent agency and metaphorically when it comes to the people that I work with. If I see somebody can excel at that, because I'm not a specialist in very many things, if anything, right? I have one really good skill, and that is being able to speak well. Everything else, even my drumming, is mediocre at best. I've managed to fake it by being surrounded by incredibly talented people. And like even the band that I was in, we were talking offline, right? When I was playing with Straight, Clean and Simple, when I was playing with Cranston Fields, Cranston Foundation, they, the musicians that I worked with were able to hide my flaws really well because they were so good that it didn't matter what I did.
Yeah, I think that's always a key. And I mean, for me, it's always been what I want. I always want to be the worst one in the band. Always. Like, I always want to put myself around people that are better. And I've learned over the years that that's not common. I don't think a lot of musicians think that way. I don't think a lot of people think that way. A lot of people want to be the smartest person in that room, right?
Yeah, see, and I never, because I think you play, as I play hockey, right? We're Canadian. We understand. You know where I'm going with this. And I'm a goaltender to make it even more complicated. And I would, again, being a goalie on a really good team can hide your flaws, but it forces you to get better, because usually when you get scored on, it's not the team's fault. It's your fault. And so you want to raise your level of play to those that are around you. And I find, like, I play in multiple leagues because as a goalie, you're always needed. And so, I know that, like, when I play in low division leagues, like, I'm getting scored on 10, 12 times a night. And I'm like, how? Like, I just played last night and had a shutout. But you tend to raise your game to the level of the play around you. So I have always been of the opinion that I want to be the worst person in the room. And that way I can learn from the best, because, especially if you're looking for continual improvement, continual growth, which is one of the mantras, one of the values within my companies is continual improvement and continual growth. You can't grow and improve if you're always playing at the level, or if you're playing below your level. That's the other thing. I could easily go and play with these guys over here, but I'm not going to grow. And in fact, I'm likely going to have my skill set atrophy because I'm not using it to its highest potential. And so I always want to surround myself with.
Hi, it's Mark Mawhinney from Natural Born Coaches, and I want to give two very big thumbs up to Tim Melanson and his Creative Crew Agency. I have been using them for a long time, and I am 100% happy. They get the job done right, they're fast, and they let me focus on my business. I don't have to worry about anything. So again, I want to give them two very big thumbs up. I have no problem recommending them. I don't give testimonials for everyone because my name is attached to it, but I gladly do so for Tim and the Creative Crew Agency. So use them, you won't regret it, and good luck.
And like you say, I find that I am better when I'm playing with better talent as well. Like, and sometimes it's a little bit surprising. Like, I can sometimes go like, I can normally not hit that, and I just did. And I'm like, okay, something's going on here. Something's different, and it is fascinating how that works. Where there's sometimes when I with these people, I could hit it every time. And then I go play a solo show and I'm like, oh, I just did that song last night. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm having a hard time here. I'm gonna have to cut this one short. What's going on? But it is like that literally has happened to me where I play it the night before with the band and I try to do it solo and I can't do it. Like, it's bizarre how that works, but I'm sure it works in business too, right?
Well, but it does, and especially in business, because you can't do everything on your own. Mm-mm. And if you don't have the good talent to support your areas where you maybe don't have as much ability or skill, then it becomes this domino effect where it's a knock on, because everybody needs to be pulling their weight, and it's like you said, like when you have a band, like when you're in a real group, right, and everything is clicking, a 3-piece band can sound like they have 12 members.
Yep.
But as soon as one thing is off, if my meter starts to slide as the drummer and I'm throwing the bass player off, and all of a sudden the vocals start sliding and we're missing harmonies, that it becomes very obvious that you only have 3 people in the band, and then it sounds like only one person is playing. And business is very much like that. Very much like that, where if your sales process isn't honed in and really on point, then your customer service starts to lack, which means that you now are having issues with quality, and then it starts to ping, and then now your professional reputation starts to take a hit. And then you're not getting as many clients. Now you're going to have to maybe not be able to provide the same financial compensation to your team that you were before. And then now you're not retaining really good talent because they're starting to look elsewhere. And the opposite is true, where if everybody's firing on all cylinders, everybody wants to hear the band, man. Hey, did you guys, and now all of a sudden you're selling out, stadiums instead of playing to 5 people in a pub somewhere. And it's amazing how quickly it can, exponential growth can happen, and how quickly exponential contraction can occur. And it's being hyper aware. And again, surround yourself with the best and you're going to excel.
I think that's the key there. So now let's talk a little about the jam room. It seems like you're jamming in a green room today.
Yeah. This is not my normal office studio space, which is hilarious, because I remember when you and I were initially talking about being on the show, and I'm like, oh yeah, no, and I got my studio, because I do, right? I usually broadcast from, as a performer, I have my actor studio, and it's nicely sound insulated. We've got all the good lights. I've got the really good backdrop. Everything is beautiful. I got beautiful mics, and then I got called to speak today. So I was like, yes, I can. I'm going to need this time right now to be able to record with Tim, because I don't want to have to reschedule. And so I'm going to need a really nice area to do it. And so I brought all my equipment, but yes, this is not my usual jam space. And the acoustics in here are definitely echoey.
Still pretty cool though. I mean, it's a cool background, that's for sure.
Yeah, right. Like I liked it, and it almost is enough to look digital, because it's kind of like it could be a fake background, but you can actually touch this thing. And what's funny is just above it is like that soundproofing boards that you would see in but they're not effective.
Well, then, what do you think is important in a jam room then for to be successful and to be productive, I guess?
Well, I think it really is individual and tailored. So like my jam room for me, for working at home, does not work for my wife. And when my wife works at home, she has to work in a totally separate space than where I work. Mine is great for me because I'm one of those people who gets hyper focused, and I need to eliminate stimuli outside of what I'm going to do. And my work compared to my wife's work is significantly different. And like for me as a public speaker, I need to be able to do this a lot. And, I actually stand up and talk usually. So right now I'm seated, but my camera and my light stand and my ring light, they're on a very large tripod, extendable tripod. So normally I will stand up and move when I'm giving presentations versus interviews, so that I can emulate and simulate me on stage. And so like my whole work environment, my jam, is designed to emulate and simulate being on stage and then being backstage in a dressing room, as odd as it is, so that I can do my work and hyper focus. I can put on my headphones, I can put on some Baroque music, and I can just listen to something in the background and just go through. I've had to experiment with what that looks like. Even when, back when I had InView Solutions, the mapping firm, we would play music all the time, and usually Broadway musicals. So there was this was before you could get satellite, and we would tune into an internet radio station that only broadcast Broadway musicals, and I'd listen to that kind of in the background to and do the work. So for me, my jam space needs to have music, but I think it's important for people to find out, what works for them and what doesn't, and experiment, because what works for me may not work for you. And if you find that your environment isn't working for you, change it up. Find those things, like what isn't working, how do you fix that? So now I've got the really good stage that I can go and be on stage even when I'm in the basement of my house.
Yeah. And it sounds like you're excited to be there too, right?
I love it. That's the great thing about my work is I get up every day. I'm somebody who, if you were to give me just time to myself, I would sleep 14 hours a day and wake up usually around noon or 1. Like that would be my default. And I'm a little bit of a night owl, so I'd probably work until 2 or 3, 4 in the morning and then sleep. Right. But I don't want if it says an AM at any point, I don't want to be waking up during it. But I know when I'm in my right space, like if I get an opportunity to be in a film or a TV show or on stage, or do a podcast or a radio interview or speak on stage, you could tell me my call time is 3:30 in the morning. I'll be like, yes, it is. And just be happy. And my business is structured in a way, because I have such good talent around me, that I don't have to show up very often for my business to run. And I have the ability to make my schedule and make it so that I can do things in the times that I want to do them. And because I can be home based, I can set up my space in a way that, it's great. I can wake up, I can have a shower, I can pop down to the studio and boom, be on. It's fun. It's fun to do my job.
Love it. Well, it's time for your guest solo. So tell me what's exciting in your business right now. Everything?
So everything right now is exciting in the business. We're about to publish the second version of my book. So The Power to Speak Naked, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut. The irony with that is my publisher is technically a Christian publisher. They publish other works and usually nonfiction, but it's definitely 80% of their titles are Christian. And so I was able to sneak that title in without anybody catching on, which was great. So Power to Speak Naked, Bigger, Longer, and Uncut is coming out shortly. We're just finalizing the manuscript right now and updating the cover art to reflect the new edition. And so I'm really excited for that to hit shelves, especially because the original book, came out in 2019 and was had a second edition published in 2020. Okay. And it's just, that follow up to a #1 bestseller is really cool. Plus we have a whole bunch of courses that we've been able to put together and launch. So one of the ones that I'm really, really excited about is our podcast mastery, because a lot of the people that I work with are small business entrepreneurs and people who are looking for publicity, but don't have like the $10, $20, $30, $50,000 to invest in a PR machine or an agent. And, having grown up in the industry and knowing the importance of media presence, being able to show people how to get on to 100 podcasts in 100 days with our podcast mastery challenge, which we run every month, is phenomenal. I love that, especially getting to work with the people that we get to work with and seeing their success, getting to hear the feedback about, I was on this podcast. And it's amazing the networking opportunities that being able to talk on podcasts offer. So to be able to push the podcast mastery program, and then with the book coming out, those are the big highlights right now for me. I'm just bubbling every day when I get to hear the updates from the team and what's going on and the numbers for enrollments and stuff like that. It's just, it brings me joy.
That's awesome. Yeah. Send the rock stars my way. Come on.
Yeah, we will for sure.
Well, isn't it cool though that people nowadays have it so much easier, I think, to get their marketing out there than 30 years ago, right? Just because of this whole podcast thing. It's huge, right?
Well, podcasting and media streaming and media availability, like I remember when we were playing in the band, like you had to go and you had to hand out. Do you remember handing out flyers on the street and telling people to come to your gig?
Like, yeah, putting them up on the poles. Yeah,
putting them up on the poles and stapling them up on the construction sites.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like I remember like just hustling, and then you maybe get 50 people come to your gig, and that was a good gig.
And now sure none of them saw those posters.
None of them saw the posters because they were all friends of the friends. And but now you can have YouTube channel and you can have your social media accounts plural, and there's such a proliferation of availability of information that it's it's such a wonderful era to be in. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the things that I love the most about the course that we do offer with the Podcast Mastery Challenge, because a lot of people don't realize just how quickly that snowballs, right? That we were talking about it earlier, that exponential growth, and how, like, when, at first it feels like a bit of a struggle. 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4, 4 + 4 is 8. But then you start getting into the 256 and the 512, and then like it just blows up. And with podcasting, like if you can get on 100 podcasts, and it's entirely possible, it's easy to do 100 podcasts in 100 days. Like that I was on over 300 podcasts last year. So I assure you, and I'm running an empire. My time is finite, and I was still able to get on 100 over 300 last year. So 100 podcasts in 100 days is easy. But what I think people don't understand is it's not just a podcast. Like your show goes out and airs as a podcast, but you also have the YouTube channel. Yep, and then you're going to link my information to that. Well, if you search my name right now, if you were to Google or like just go into YouTube and type Tyler Foley, I think I have like 120 things that pop up. Like you type my name in and I come up, and it's all other people who have posted this stuff for me. So that is media and PR that I didn't have to do, that you're going to edit, and anybody can do this, whether you're a musician, whether you're an artist, whether you're a businessman or an entrepreneur. If you want to get the quick publicity, this podcasting thing,
it's great for the hustlers, right? Like it's back in the day, you had to throw money at it. You had to have a lot of money to put up a billboard. For hustling, like we did then, like putting posters up and all that stuff. I don't know how much you got, but nowadays, I mean, geez, if you're a musician and you're not sure if you're going to be able to get a gig or not, just record something and put it online. The gig's right there, right?
And the other thing is if you don't even know what you want to put up, to put on a cover of something. Like you see some of these musicians who have been discovered because the artist who they covered saw them do the cover and were like, they just did it better than me, and they need an opportunity. And I can think of at least 5 examples of that, of where other like established artists have seen the work of somebody else. I think, like, we're Canadian. Didn't Usher find Justin Bieber off of a YouTube video?
Yep, he did. Yep.
That
came from YouTube.
Hate that has to be the example, but it is. And it's so true. It speaks to the power of the media presence that is available to everybody for free right now. And as you said, it's way better to be recording and putting something up on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, TikTok, than it is to be at Kinko's at 5:00 in the afternoon, running off 150 posters and then pushing them into people's hands on the street.
And trying to get someone to hire you for oh my God. Like now it's Walk Off the Earth is another one. That's another Canadian one. They did it through just sheer, like, and their story is fantastic because they put out a lot of videos before one of them took off. Like they just
And then
hustle.
that's the other thing too. So right, that preparation that we talked about at the beginning, they had all of that catalog in the back that nobody saw.
Yep.
Nobody saw. But then they hit that one viral video, and then everybody goes back and looks at the catalog and goes, "Oh, these people are genius." And then again, that's the power of just going out and doing it. Why I love doing the 100 Podcasts in 100 Days challenge, because now when somebody finds that one interview that piques their interest, you have 99 others that are social proof, so that when you find that guy who's going to hire you for the gig, that media promoter, and she wants you there, that person can go back and look at the social proof and go, "Oh no, Tim's got it. Tim's got it because look at these hundreds of episodes that he's done. Tyler can do it because look at these 100 different things that he's done." That becomes your social proof. And it's somebody else saying it. It's not you. It's not you going, hey, look at me, look at me. When you do these, particularly the podcast, that is somebody else's platform saying, this person has something to say. We believe in their message. Check it out. And then you can link that all together. It's the exponential growth, man. It's the exponential growth.
But we talk forever on this, man. It's a great interview.
Really good.
But now, so how do we find out more?
If anybody wants to find out more from me, they can go to the website, which is SeanTylerFoley.com. Tell them Tyler sent you. I do spell my name the proper Irish way, SeanTylerFoley.com. But if they're going to do that, the easiest thing they can do, Tim, is go down into the show notes below. But if they're going to go onto the show notes below, they're already on your platform. So I would ask them kindly to do me this one favor. If they can do me this one favor, I'm going to give them some free stuff. So if they could, because they're already listening to your show, if they could give you a 5-star review and in the comments type why. Like, don't just click the stars and walk away. Yeah. Like, give Tim some feedback so that he knows what you're enjoying about the show, maybe who one of your favorite takeaways was, what one of your favorite guests was, something you'd like to see in the future. What are some of the bits of advice that you'd like to see more of? Any of that would be really helpful, so that what it's going to do is it's going to help all of us. It's going to help you get more and better material from Tim. It's going to help Tim rise in the ranks of the podcast listings, because now he's going to have more 5-star reviews. He's going to have more comments, more interaction. It means the algorithm pushes him ahead. That helps me because more people will see this episode, because more people are looking at his show in general, and it helps everybody. You get better material. I get better publicity. Tim has the ability to get more and better guests to serve you, but only if you give that 5-star review. So no 5-star review, no free gifts for you. But if you're willing to give Tim a 5-star review, when you come and click on my link, SeanTylerFoley.com, at the bottom of the show notes, I will give you a free PDF download of the original manuscript for The Power to Speak Naked. I will give you access to my Drop the Mic speaker training series, which is 7 5-minute videos that will give you very actionable, quick tips to be a better public speaker. And we're going to invite you into my private Facebook group, Endless Stages, where I go live every Tuesday for 20 minutes to provide tips from the group. So it's group driven, it's group run. Anybody who's struggling with anything, you want more information on podcasting, more information on finding stages, more information on getting your work out there, more information on business information, put it into the group. We answer those questions every Tuesday live. And so you'll get all of that for free if you go to SeanTylerFoley.com. But again, only if you give Tim a 5-star review. You give Tim a 5-star review, and I'm happy to give that all to you.
Thank you so much for all that and for this entire episode. This has been a lot of fun jamming out with you today.
Oh, I've enjoyed it, man. Let's rock out to the outro.
Absolutely. And hopefully at some point we'll be able to jam together. Eh? I'd like to get you on the kit.
Oh yeah.
Tunes.
It'd be my joy and my pleasure to poorly back you with some mediocre timing.
Awesome. I can handle that. I've been doing jams for quite a while now.
Yeah, man.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. This has been a lot of fun. And to the listeners, make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment. We'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.